When my sister saw me walk into the military ball that night, her laughter was the loudest in the room. She looked stunning in her dress uniform, surrounded by decorated officers, while I stood there in a simple black suit. "Oh, look who decided to show up," she called out, loud enough for everyone to hear. "The civilian failure of the family." Her friends chuckled, and I felt the heat crawl up my neck. To them I was nothing. Just her quiet brother who never joined the military, who never made our parents proud. What they didn't know was that I had already seen more battlefields than any of them could imagine. I smiled politely and took a seat at the far corner of the room, ignoring the whispers. I didn't wear medals. I didn't need to. My past didn't exist on paper. I was a ghost the military never acknowledged, because I belonged to a classified world. The kind where your name never appeared in reports, only in the whispers of soldiers who survived. Later that night, when her commanding officer, a U.S. Navy SEAL commander, spotted me, the atmosphere shifted. His eyes widened, and for the first time my sister went silent. The man approached me, saluted sharply, and said in a low voice that carried across the room, "Sir, they call you the Angel of Death." The laughter stopped. My sister froze. Every officer in the hall stared at me with sudden recognition and fear. I had no rank, no uniform, but they all knew exactly who I was. And in that silent moment, my sister finally understood. I wasn't the failure of the family. I was the reason her world still existed. The evening began like 1,000 others. A city painted in gold by the setting sun, the air thick with perfume and pride. The military gala was being held at the Grand Horizon Hall, a place where chandeliers gleamed like captured stars and every uniform reflected the light of glory. I hadn't planned to attend. I never did. But this time I had a reason, a mission buried under layers of secrecy, and a sister who had no idea her failure of a brother would walk into her perfect little world that night. As I stepped out of the car, the valet looked at me differently, not disrespectfully, just uncertainly. I wasn't wearing a uniform, no medals, no ribbons, no visible sign that I belonged among the elite. Just a black tailored suit and the quiet confidence of someone who had lived a life in the shadows. Inside, laughter echoed like polished glass, bright, brittle, ready to shatter. My sister, Captain Laura Evans, stood at the center of the crowd. Even from a distance, she looked like the person our parents always wanted me to be. Decorated, respected, and utterly unaware of what humility meant. Her short blonde hair framed her sharp features, and her uniform gleamed with fresh medals from her latest deployment. The moment she saw me, her perfect smile twisted into something cruel. "Well, look who finally decided to crawl out of his cave," she said, loud enough for everyone nearby to hear. Her fellow officers turned their heads. Some chuckled softly. Others gave me polite, pitying smiles. "Didn't expect to see you here, Jake. I thought classified hackers didn't do parties." The jab hit its mark, but I didn't flinch. "Good evening, Laura," I said calmly, meeting her gaze. "You look accomplished." A smirk. Accomplished. That's one word for it. You know, Mom and Dad were just saying how proud they are of my promotion. Maybe next time you'll give them something to brag about too. Her friends laughed. The sound was sharp, rehearsed, the kind of laughter that feeds egos and kills empathy. I wanted to walk away, but I had a job to do. I moved past her and took a seat near the back, where the lighting was dim and the chatter faded into a dull hum. My earpiece buzzed softly. "Eyes on target?" a low voice asked. It was Agent Keller from Command. "Affirmative," I whispered. "No movement yet. Maintain distance." "Copy that. You're Ghost until further notice." Ghost. The code name still felt strange to hear outside the field. In my world, names didn't matter, results did. Years ago, when the military realized that digital warfare required soldiers who could disappear, I was recruited off the grid. No records, no commendations, no trace. The missions were blacker than black, the kind where no one lived to tell the tale. The kind that made enemies whisper about the Angel of Death. I leaned back, watching the crowd. Generals, admirals, foreign officers, all gathered for speeches, drinks, and glory. But my attention wasn't on them. Somewhere in this room was a man named Viktor Denev, a former Russian intelligence officer turned arms broker. He wasn't supposed to be here. Yet, surveillance had confirmed he'd slipped in under a fake name, hoping to make contact with a corrupt liaison inside the military. My job wasn't just to find him, it was to make sure he didn't leave. A waiter passed by, offering champagne. I took a glass, more for camouflage than thirst. My sister was still nearby, soaking in attention, laughing with her commander and a group of Navy officers. I heard her say my name again, her tone dripping with mockery. "Jake thinks he's so mysterious," she said. "Always with his little tech projects. Probably just sitting in a dark room playing hacker movies." The group laughed again. I smiled faintly. If only they knew the kind of dark rooms I'd been in. Ones filled with blood, code, and silence. The speeches began. General Maddox took the podium, his voice echoing through the hall as he praised the sacrifices of men and women in uniform. Applause followed every other sentence. My eyes scanned the crowd, subtle but constant. I caught a glimpse of a tall man near the far bar, his posture too alert for a guest, his eyes flicking toward the exits. The profile matched Denev's. Slightly aged, scar under the left eye. I tapped my earpiece. "I have visual," I murmured. Keller's voice sharpened. "Confirm ID before engagement. We need solid proof." "Understood." I rose slowly, pretending to stretch, and made my way toward the bar. Every step was calculated. The weight of the concealed weapon in my jacket was a reminder. I wasn't here as a brother or a guest. I was here as a ghost. When I reached the bar, Denev turned his head slightly. His accent was heavy when he spoke to the bartender. "Vodka. Neat." Then his eyes met mine. Recognition flickered, a flash of fear. He knew me. Or at least the stories. Before I could react, my sister's voice broke the tension. "Jake, what are you doing over there?" Trying to act mysterious again. The crowd turned to look. Clenched my jaw. Her timing couldn't have been worse. Denev's lips curved into a thin smile as he used the distraction to slip something into his jacket. I caught the movement but couldn't break cover yet. "Just getting a drink," I said lightly, forcing a smile. "You always had good timing, sis." "Always," she replied smugly, not realizing she'd just endangered a classified op. The next few minutes blurred. I followed Denev discreetly as he exited the hall, slipping into a restricted corridor behind the stage. My sister's laughter faded into the background. When the door closed behind me, the world turned silent and cold. "Command, target is moving," I whispered. "Engage only if necessary," Keller warned. "We have eyes on your six." Denev turned sharply into a service hallway, pulling a suppressed pistol from his coat. I drew mine instantly. The confrontation was silent, brutal, and fast. 2 shots, 1 life ended. His weapon clattered to the floor. I exhaled slowly, steadying my heartbeat. Another ghost added to the graveyard no one would ever visit. I retrieved the encrypted drive from his pocket and called it in. "Package secured. Send cleanup." "Roger that." "Extraction in 5. I left the body where it fell. No blood trail, no witnesses. When I returned to the main hall, the music had started again. People danced, laughed, toasted. No one had any idea that a threat had just been neutralized meters away. My sister spotted me and smirked. "What, done hiding already?" she teased. Forced a chuckle. "Something like that." Then the crowd parted as Commander Jonathan Reeves, a towering man with the calm authority of someone who'd seen too much, walked toward me. He stopped in front of my sister first, nodding politely, but his eyes were fixed on me. "Excuse me," he said to her, "but, is this your brother?" Laura blinked, confused. "Yes, sir." "Why?" Reeves's jaw tightened slightly. Then he turned to me, extended his hand and said quietly, "Sir, it's an honor. They call you the Angel of Death, don't they?" The air froze. Every head nearby turned. My sister's expression collapsed into disbelief. The laughter that had followed her all evening vanished in a heartbeat. I shook Reeves's hand, my voice even. "That name doesn't belong in this room, Commander." "Maybe not," he said, still in awe. "But I'll never forget Kandahar. You saved my entire unit. None of us ever knew who you were, until now." Laura's face drained of color. "Kandahar," she whispered. "You were there." I nodded slightly, eyes softening. I was everywhere they needed me to be. The hall had gone silent. Even the orchestra faltered for a moment. I looked at my sister. For once, there was no arrogance in her eyes, only realization. She finally saw me, not as the brother she mocked, but as the man behind a shadowed legend. Before anyone could ask more, my phone buzzed. "Duty calls," I murmured. "Enjoy your evening, Captain." I gave her a faint smile and turned toward the exit. As I walked away, I heard her voice. Quiet, trembling. "Jake, I'm sorry. I didn't turn around. Some truths don't need words. Some respect is earned in silence." And that night, for the first time, my sister understood that the world doesn't always honor its real heroes. Sometimes it fears them. The night after the gala, sleep refused to visit me. The city outside my apartment pulsed with life. Cars honking, neon lights flickering. Yet inside there was only silence. I sat near the window, still dressed in the same black suit, the faint smell of gunpowder clinging to the fabric. The memory of Laura's face, that stunned, broken expression, replayed in my mind like a silent film. For years, she had seen me as the quiet disappointment of the family, and I had allowed it. But now the curtain had lifted, and behind it was a truth she was never supposed to see. The encrypted drive I had taken from Victor Deneuve lay on the table beside me, small enough to fit between my fingers yet heavy with danger. I inserted it into a secure terminal, bypassing the layers of military-grade encryption. The data that appeared made my blood run cold. Names, payment logs, and coordinates. Someone inside the military was selling classified intel to foreign groups. The pattern suggested a leak that had been active for months, possibly years. My phone buzzed. "You didn't send the package," Keller's voice came through, edged with tension. "I needed to verify something," I said. "That's not your job, Jake. You extract and deliver, not analyze. This time it's different. The leak connects to U.S. command structures. Someone with top clearance is feeding intel out of Norfolk." There was a pause, then a sigh. "You always dig too deep. Be careful. This trail leads to people who don't like being exposed, even to ghosts." The line went dead. I leaned back, exhaling slowly. Keller was right. I had crossed the line between execution and curiosity. But I couldn't stop now. If someone within our system was selling lives, I had to know who. The next morning, I received an unexpected visitor. The knock was polite but firm, the kind that belonged to someone who never doubted authority. When I opened the door, my sister stood there, her uniform neatly pressed, her face still marked by confusion and something softer. Guilt, maybe. "Can I come in?" she asked quietly. I stepped aside, saying nothing. She walked in, scanning the apartment like a soldier assessing a battlefield. Her eyes lingered on the table, where several encrypted devices lay scattered. "So, this is where the failure works," she murmured, half smiling but without cruelty this time. "This is where the invisible wars happen," I replied. She turned toward me, her voice trembling slightly. "Jake. That man, Commander Reeves, he called you the Angel of Death. Everyone's been talking about it. Who are you really?" I hesitated. Telling her the truth would mean crossing lines I had spent my life protecting. Yet, looking into her eyes, I saw the same sister who used to hold my hand when we were kids, the one who stood up for me before the world turned her proud and distant. "I'm the person who keeps people like you alive," I said finally. "My work isn't in reports or medals. It's in the missions that never make it to headlines. When the system can't act publicly, they send me." She looked stunned. "So you kill people?" "Sometimes," I said quietly. "But mostly, I erase threats before they reach your world." Laura sat down slowly, processing every word. Why didn't you tell me? Because secrets like this don't belong in families. You wanted to serve the country in daylight. I serve it in the dark. The silence that followed was heavy but not hostile. Then she noticed the drive on the table. What's that? She asked. Evidence, I said almost absently. Evidence of what? Of betrayal. From someone inside your command. Her head snapped up. What do you mean? I turned the screen toward her, showing the list of transactions. Her name was not there, but several officers from her division were. These are encrypted accounts traced to overseas networks, I explained. Money transfers to unknown operatives. The leak has been happening through channels connected to the 9th Division, your unit. Her face went pale. That's impossible. Everyone in my unit is loyal. Loyalty isn't immune to greed, I said gently. Or fear. She stood up, shaking her head. If this is true, I need to report it to command. I met her eyes. And what do you think will happen when you do? The moment you bring this up, you'll be marked. They'll either silence you or discredit me. So what do we do? She asked, her voice breaking between anger and helplessness. We investigate quietly, I said. You'll go back to base, act normal and keep your eyes open. I'll track the network from here. She nodded hesitantly. You really trust me to help you with this? I smiled faintly. You're still my sister, Laura. You just forgot who I was. For the first time in years, we shared a moment of quiet understanding. Fragile, uncertain, but real. Over the next few days, Laura did her part. She returned to her base and kept contact minimal, sending coded messages through secure drops we used to play with as kids, back when secret missions were just games. Meanwhile, I traced the digital footprint left by the transactions. Each lead took me deeper into military databases I wasn't supposed to access. Every firewall I broke risked exposure, but the deeper I went, the clearer the picture became. Someone with the codename Spectre was coordinating operations from inside the intelligence branch. Spectre wasn't just leaking information. He was redirecting missions, leading units into traps for foreign interests. The patterns matched the ambushes that had killed dozens of soldiers overseas, including one Laura's team barely survived months ago. The thought hit me hard. My sister's near-death experience hadn't been a coincidence. It was engineered. At 2 a.m. my phone rang again. It was Keller. Jake, what the hell are you doing? You're burning access tunnels that took years to build. I found something you need to see. Unless it's the end of the world, it can wait. It is the end of the world for the people we trust, I said coldly. Spectres inside our command network. There was a long pause. Send the data, Keller said finally, his tone grim. He uploaded the files. When the transfer was done, I leaned back, exhaustion creeping in. Just then my system flashed a red alert. Someone was tracking my signal. Trace, live and aggressive. Whoever was behind Spectre had noticed. I shut everything down, grabbed my go bag, and left through the emergency exit just as black SUVs turned the corner. Down the street, I watched from the shadows as two men in dark suits broke into my apartment. Their movements were professional, silent. Not police, not FBI. These were private operatives, the kind used by powerful people who wanted problems to disappear. I dialed Laura's secure line. Change of plans. They're on to me. What? Jake, where are you? Doesn't matter. Just stay away from your base for now. You're in danger. Danger from who? Your own command, I said. Spectre's higher than I thought. She didn't argue. Tell me what to do. Pause. Meet me tomorrow 0900 at the old observatory near Arlington. Come alone. I'll be there, she said. When the line disconnected, I slipped into the night. 4 years I'd been the invisible shield, the man who protected others without being seen. But now the battlefield was closing in. The hunter had become the hunted. Morning came gray and heavy, clouds rolling over the horizon like bruises. I reached the observatory early, scanning the perimeter. My instincts screamed caution. Laura arrived right on time, dressed in civilian clothes, her eyes darting around nervously. "Jake," she said breathlessly, "you look like you haven't slept." "I haven't," I replied. "We've got a name." "Who?" "Colonel Mason Reeves." Her jaw dropped. "Commander Reeves's brother." "Exactly. Reeves may have been the public hero, but his brother's the ghost behind the leaks. He's been selling data under the codename Spectre. Every time his brother's unit went out, he fed their routes to enemies for profit." Laura shook her head in disbelief. "But Reeves called you a hero. He respected you." "Because he doesn't know his brother's a traitor," I said. The wind howled through the broken glass of the observatory. I could see the storm building, not in the sky but in her eyes. "What now?" she whispered. "Now," I said, checking my weapon. "We finish what we started." For the first time, my sister didn't argue or mock. She stood beside me, steady and silent. The pride in her eyes wasn't arrogance this time. It was trust. And as we left the observatory together, I realized something I hadn't felt in years. I wasn't alone anymore. The morning air was cold, carrying a faint metallic scent that made my skin prickle. Laura and I moved through the back alleys of Arlington like ghosts ourselves, careful not to be seen. The city was waking up, commuters bustling, streetlights fading, traffic humming, and yet in this ordinary rhythm, death had already planned its entrance. My sister stayed close, silent but alert, her hands occasionally brushing against the concealed weapon in her jacket. I could see the tension in her jaw. She was no stranger to danger, but the stakes were higher now. This wasn't a mission assigned by the military, this was personal. Colonel Mason Reeves wasn't a man to underestimate. In public, he was polished, disciplined, the perfect brother to a decorated SEAL commander. Behind closed doors, he was ruthless, smart, patient, and utterly merciless. He had built a network of mercenaries, hackers, and corrupt officers who moved like shadows inside the system. Every step we took now was under scrutiny, every digital footprint tracked. I had dealt with professional killers before, but the idea that someone with that level of access, knowledge, and connections was actively hunting us brought a tension I hadn't felt in years. Our first stop was an abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of the city. It was the only place I trusted for secure communication. The walls were thick, the windows broken, and the echoes of our footsteps bounced like warnings. I set up a mobile terminal and linked it to multiple encrypted channels. Laura watched, her eyes wide but attentive. "Jake, I don't know half of what you're doing," she said. "You don't need to," I replied, fingers flying over the keyboard. "You just need to follow instructions and trust me." Hours passed as I traced the money trails, the shipments, the encrypted messages, every breadcrumb left by Reeves's network. The more I uncovered, the deeper the corruption ran. Weapons shipments meant for classified units had been rerouted to private militias overseas. Sensitive operational intel had been sold to rival factions in the Middle East. And most alarmingly, Reeves had knowledge of several ongoing missions, meaning he could manipulate outcomes and send soldiers into traps without anyone knowing. My stomach turned as I realized Laura's team, which had survived the previous ambush, had only narrowly escaped because I had intervened without anyone knowing. Laura broke the silence. "All this, my whole unit could be in danger again, right? And I wouldn't even know who to trust." "Exactly," I said grimly. "Which is why we can't confront him openly. He has allies in positions you'd never suspect. Anyone could be working for him, even people you call friends." We decided the next step had to be direct observation. I had contacts, old ghosts, soldiers who owed me favors, operatives who moved in the spaces between classified files and the public eye. One of them, a former Navy intelligence officer named Ramirez, agreed to shadow Reeves's operations under a false identity. He confirmed Reeves's movements, daily meetings with contractors, encrypted comms late at night, and occasional, carefully staged public appearances to maintain the illusion of innocence. By mid-afternoon we had a plan. Laura would gather intel from within her base, feeding me updates without alerting anyone. I would continue my digital infiltration, tracing the sources and anticipating Reeves's moves. The tension was unbearable, but there was no turning back. Every hour counted. The first real danger came sooner than I expected. As we exited the warehouse, 2 black SUVs rolled into the lot. The doors opened, and 3 men in tactical gear stepped out. My instincts kicked in instantly. "Move!" I hissed, grabbing Laura's hand and pulling her behind a stack of crates. Bullets shattered the metal, pinging against the containers, spraying fragments of rust and dirt. The attackers were professionals, precise, and clearly familiar with our movements. "Jake, what now?" Laura whispered, fear in her voice. "Survive first," I replied, pulling a compact pistol from my jacket. We moved through the shadows, returning fire when necessary, each shot calculated to disable, not to waste. The men faltered for a moment, surprised by our skill, but they weren't ordinary mercenaries. They had training that matched our own. I knew then that Reeves had anticipated resistance and was prepared. After a tense chase through the empty industrial zone, we managed to escape, disappearing into the surrounding streets. Both of us were breathing heavily, adrenaline still coursing. Laura's hands shook as she checked herself for injuries. "Jake, they weren't amateurs. Who are they?" I didn't answer immediately. My mind was racing through possibilities, analyzing the threat. "Reeves has resources we can't match head-on," I finally said. "We'll need to be smarter, faster, and completely unpredictable." Back at the safe house, we regrouped. Laura sat in a chair, staring at the wall. "I can't believe how deep this goes. My entire command could be compromised." I placed a hand on her shoulder. "You're not alone anymore. We'll handle this together. But you need to understand, once you step into this shadow world, there's no going back." We spent the next several hours preparing. I loaded firearms, checked surveillance, and ran simulations of potential attack scenarios. Laura observed, taking notes, asking questions, absorbing every detail. I could see the shift in her demeanor. The mocking, arrogant sister from the gala had disappeared. In her place stood a partner, aware of danger but willing to face it. Night fell, and the city transformed into a maze of lights and danger. I accessed a secondary terminal to track Reeves's comms in real time. A new pattern emerged. Reeves was planning a meeting with several foreign operatives. The location was heavily guarded, but the opportunity was too critical to ignore. If we could intercept, even remotely, we could gather evidence strong enough to expose him. Laura leaned over my shoulder. "Jake, how do we get close without being seen?" "Careful surveillance, deception, and patience," I said. "We observe, record, and report. No rash moves." We moved to a vantage point overlooking the meeting area, a private, isolated estate outside the city. Through night vision binoculars, we saw Reeves arrive, flanked by 2 men in tactical suits. Several vehicles were parked strategically, security personnel patrolling every perimeter. The operation was professional, coordinated, and lethal. Any misstep would mean death. "Laura, stay behind me. Watch and remember every detail," I whispered. She nodded, silent but focused. Hours passed. Reeves and his men entered the estate, and I traced every movement through my encrypted channels. We intercepted digital communications, recording names, locations, and plans. Every detail added to the growing dossier that could bring the network down. But then came the critical moment. Reeves noticed anomalies in his security system, slight interference from my surveillance setup. His head turned sharply, scanning the property, and for the first time, I felt the weight of being hunted not just by mercenaries but by a man who could anticipate every move. "We've been spotted," I said calmly, my eyes fixed on the monitors. "Time to disappear." We retreated silently, avoiding guards and cameras, melting into the shadows as if we were never there. Once back at the safe house, the reality set in. This was no longer just about exposing corruption. It was about survival. Reeves had the resources, the skill, and the ruthlessness to eliminate anyone who threatened him. Laura finally spoke, voice steady but tinged with fear. Jake, he's dangerous. How do we stop someone like that? I looked at her, my expression unreadable. We don't fight him the way the world fights. We fight him where the world can't see. In shadows, in silence, and with precision. The night ended with both of us exhausted but more determined than ever. I realized something important. Laura had changed. The mocking girl who belittled me in front of generals had transformed into an ally, a sister who could stand beside me in the darkness. And for the first time I felt a fragile sense of hope that together, we could confront the monster hiding behind a brother's polished public image. By dawn, we had a plan to infiltrate Reeves's digital network directly. The risk was astronomical. One wrong move and both of us would be dead. But we had no choice. The longer we waited, the more lives were at stake. As we prepared for the next phase, I caught a glimpse of Laura's face. Determined, alert, ready. She was no longer just my sister. She was a warrior in her own right. And for the first time in years, I wasn't carrying this burden alone. The shadows were closing in, the game had escalated, and one thing was clear. Reeves would not stop. Neither would we. And as we vanished into the gray morning, I knew that the battles ahead would test everything. Our skills, our courage, and the fragile trust that had begun to grow between us. The night was heavy, like a curtain pressing down on the city, when Laura and I set out for the next phase. Every step we took was calculated, measured, rehearsed in countless simulations in the safe house. This wasn't a drill. This was real, and failure meant more than death. It meant leaving dozens of soldiers, including Laura's unit, exposed to a man who would manipulate, betray, and kill without hesitation. The adrenaline coursing through me was familiar, but this time it had a new edge, the weight of responsibility shared with my sister. She had stepped out of the shadows of her own pride, and now we moved together, two ghosts on a single mission. The target was Reeves's Central Operations Hub, a nondescript building in the industrial sector, heavily guarded, monitored by cameras and motion sensors. From a distance, it looked innocuous, but the digital footprint told a different story. Inside were servers, encrypted drives, and a small army of men who answered only to Reeves. The plan was simple in theory. Infiltrate, extract evidence, and leave without being seen. In practice, it was a labyrinth of danger. We approached the building on foot, moving along rooftops and through abandoned lots to avoid street cameras. Laura's heart beat audibly against my chest as we crouched behind a rusted shipping container, and I could feel the tension radiating off her. "Relax your breathing," I whispered. "Fear is a tool, not a chain. Use it." She nodded, adjusting the strap of her tactical harness, the same one she had used in actual deployments but now repurposed for a covert operation that no one could ever officially acknowledge. Once inside, the hub was a hive of activity. Reeves's men were armed, vigilant, and trained. I motioned for Laura to stay close as I guided her through the maze of servers and terminals, relying on my knowledge of their patrol patterns. Every sound, a boot scraping concrete, a whisper over a headset, made my senses flare. I realized that Reeves had anticipated intrusion. Even the smallest systems had secondary alarms and hidden motion sensors. But we had one advantage: speed and unpredictability. We reached the main server room, a stark, cold space filled with blinking lights and humming machinery. I knelt at the nearest terminal, pulling out a small, customized device capable of bypassing military-grade encryption. Laura stood watch, her eyes scanning the hallway for any approaching threats. The seconds stretched into minutes, each one heavier than the last. "Jake, hurry," she whispered. "I don't like being this close." "I know," I replied, not taking my eyes off the terminal. The bypass was delicate. A single error would trigger a lockdown, alarms, and armed response within seconds. Finally, the encryption fell. Files streamed across the screen. Contracts, shipment logs, mission coordinates, financial records. The network scale was staggering. Reeves wasn't just selling intelligence. He was orchestrating entire operations that manipulated military missions globally. The deaths, the ambushes, the misdirected units, all traced back to him. My stomach tightened as I realized how many lives had already been lost because of this man. Then the unexpected happened. A reflection in the glass panel behind me caught my eye. A shadow moved too smoothly, too intentionally. Reeves had entered. He didn't make a sound, didn't shout commands. He simply observed. My heart skipped, but I forced calm into my posture. Laura sensed it too. He spoke softly, his voice controlled but laced with menace. Jake. I wondered when we would meet face to face. I stood, keeping my hands visible but ready. Mason, you're going to pay for everything. He smiled almost admiringly. Pay? You misunderstand. I've already won. You're intruding in my world, and now you'll leave as nothing but a memory. Within a second, the room erupted. Reeves's men activated the lockdown, sealing exits and drawing weapons. Laura and I split instinctively. Her moving toward the servers to grab as much evidence as possible, me engaging the nearest guard with precise, disabling shots. The air was filled with the smell of ozone from discharged weapons and the metallic tang of fear. Every move had to be perfect. One mistake meant capture, interrogation, or death. I caught sight of Reeves moving with terrifying precision. His hands steady, his demeanor unflinching. He was no amateur. Years of military training and battlefield experience made him a lethal opponent. My instincts kicked into overdrive. I maneuvered through the maze of equipment, blocking lines of fire, pulling Laura to cover when bullets shredded the air around us. Jake, we have to go now, Laura shouted, her voice a mixture of panic and determination. She held a hard drive I had marked as critical, the evidence that could expose Reeves once and for all. I assessed the situation. The server room was compromised, and extraction routes were limited. Then I remembered the ventilation shafts we had scoped during initial surveillance. This way, I yelled, leading her toward a narrow shaft in the corner. We crawled inside, metal scraping against our knees, dust and sweat filling our lungs. Behind us, Reeves's men tried to follow but couldn't fit through the tight space. Crawling in the shadows, I whispered instructions. Move silently, control your breathing. Every sound could alert them. Laura obeyed, her focus absolute. Even in fear, she trusted me implicitly. A sister who had mocked me in front of generals now relied on me for survival. We emerged outside the building in an alley bathed in dim moonlight. The city felt eerily quiet, almost complicit in our escape. Reeves was still inside, no doubt furious but constrained by the structural limits of the building. I glanced at Laura, her face pale but determined. You did well, I said. She looked at me, eyes wide. We actually made it out. Not yet, I replied. We're alive, but this isn't over. We made our way back to the safe house, careful to avoid surveillance cameras and patrols. The evidence we carried was explosive, enough to topple Reeves's network if presented to the right authorities. But the risk of exposure was enormous. One wrong move, and we would both vanish without a trace. Once inside, we spread the files across the table. Laura scanned through them, disbelief and horror flickering across her face. This is everything, she whispered. All the ambushes, the operations that went wrong, he planned them. Yes, I said quietly. And this proves it. We have to act carefully. If Reeves knows we have this, he'll stop at nothing. We spent the night analyzing every detail, mapping out connections, and planning our next move. Laura asked questions, challenging me, offering insight from her experience in the military. I realized she had grown immensely in just a few days. No longer a sister living in my shadow, but a partner capable of strategic thinking and decisive action. By dawn, a pattern emerged. Reeves was planning another operation, moving critical assets that, if intercepted, could save countless lives. The window was narrow, and we had to move fast. I briefed Laura on the plan. We would present the evidence to Commander Reeves, her mentor trusted by everyone, forcing him to act against his brother without compromising our positions. The tension between us was palpable. Jake, what if he refuses? What if Mason Reeves finds out? She asked, voice trembling. Then we do what we've always done, I replied. We survive, adapt, and strike where necessary. Shadows protect us. Precision guides us. And nothing stops us from finishing this mission. For the first time, I saw determination in Laura that mirrored my own. Fear was present, yes, but it had been tempered into resolve. The sister who had mocked me at the gala was gone. The partner I needed had arrived. As we prepared to leave, I took one last look at the city skyline, the moonlight glinting off buildings like steel knives. Reeves's network was still active, his forces still lethal, but we had the advantage of initiative, information, and trust, tools more deadly than any weapon. And in that moment, I realized something profound. Battles were no longer just about survival or secrecy. They were about reclaiming control, exposing the truth, and ensuring that those who hid behind power and deception could never harm the innocent again. We stepped out into the morning, ready to move. The hunt was far from over, but we were no longer just survivors. We were hunters, and the lion's den we were about to enter would not swallow us. It would witness our fury. The night had fallen like a shroud, thick and suffocating, when Laura and I approached the hidden compound on the outskirts of the city. The operation would either end everything or end us. My mind ran through every contingency, every potential variable. Reeves had resources, trained men, and a ruthless intellect. But I had something stronger. The element of surprise and the weight of justice on my side. Laura moved beside me silently, her eyes sharp, her posture tense. She was no longer the sister who mocked me at the gala. She was a soldier, my partner, and my equal in this deadly game. The perimeter of the compound was deceptively quiet. From the outside, it looked like a normal industrial site, abandoned and forgotten. Inside, however, digital eyes monitored every corner, and armed guards patrolled corridors with practiced precision. I scanned the area with binoculars, identifying patrol patterns, camera angles, and the location of key entry points. Every step we took had to be precise. One misstep would trigger alarms and turn the hunt into a battle for survival. We approached through the shadows, using maintenance tunnels and service entrances we had mapped days before. Laura's hand brushed against my arm, a silent signal of readiness. "Jake," she whispered. "I'm ready." I nodded, giving her a faint smile, the first one of the night. She returned it, a mix of fear and determination lighting her face. This mission was about more than exposing Reeves. It was about survival, justice, and reclaiming the lives stolen by his corruption. Inside the compound, we moved like shadows, silent and swift. Guards were alert, but their attention was misdirected by distractions I had set earlier. Small electronic devices that created phantom movements on security feeds. We reached the heart of the operation, Reeves's command center. Servers hummed with activity, monitors displayed surveillance feeds, and papers with encrypted codes littered the desks. Reeves was there, his calm posture betraying no emotion, watching multiple screens. When he saw us, a small smirk appeared on his face. "Jake," he said smoothly. "I expected you sooner. And you brought the little sister along. How touching." I stepped forward, eyes locked on him. "Mason, it ends tonight. You're done manipulating lives, selling secrets, and orchestrating death. It stops here." He laughed softly, a chilling sound that echoed in the room. "You think you can stop me? You're outnumbered, outgunned, and outplayed. Everything you've done, every mission you've survived. It doesn't matter here. This is my world." Laura stepped beside me, weapon raised. "Your world is built on lies and blood," she said firmly. "And tonight we burn it down." Reeves's smirk faded slightly as he assessed her. "Impressive," he admitted. "You've grown stronger faster. But strength won't save you." In an instant, chaos erupted. Guards moved to intercept us, but we were ready. I engaged them with precision, neutralizing each threat efficiently. Laura's shots were swift and controlled, each strike calculated to incapacitate without leaving unnecessary traces. The air was filled with the sounds of struggle, the metallic ring of gunfire, the thud of bodies hitting the floor, the rapid breaths of two hunters facing a cornered lion. Reeves didn't join the fray immediately. He stayed back, observing, calculating. That was his mistake. While he underestimated us, we adapted. We forced his men into choke points, using the environment against them, turning their training into vulnerabilities. The fight was a ballet of precision and instinct, honed over years of experience. Finally, only Reeves remained. He stood at the far end of the room, unarmed but confident, watching us. I could see the arrogance in his eyes, the same arrogance that had cost countless lives. Laura and I advanced together, weapons trained, movements synchronized. "You think you can kill me?" he asked, his tone calm but edged with challenge. "I don't think," I replied. "I know." We closed the distance. Reeves reached for a hidden weapon, but I was faster. My hand shot out, grabbing his wrist and twisting, forcing him to the ground. Laura moved behind him, keeping him pinned while I retrieved a small recording device from my pocket, a live feed to military command. "This ends now," I said, activating it. Every transaction, every ambush, every betrayal captured. Reeves struggled, fury and fear flashing across his face. "You'll never prove it," he shouted. "Watch us try," I said, keeping him under control. Laura's grip tightened, steady and unyielding. For the first time I saw the man break, the facade of control crumbling under the weight of evidence and the presence of two people he underestimated. The next few minutes felt like hours. I instructed Laura to disable communications, ensuring no reinforcements could intervene. Reeves was shouting, struggling, but it was futile. Every move had been anticipated, every escape blocked. And in those moments, I realized something profound. Power means nothing without accountability, and even the strongest can fall when shadows unite with light. Finally, he stopped resisting, slumping against the cold floor. I retrieved the final piece of evidence, a memory chip containing the complete ledger of his operations. Laura stepped back, her expression a mixture of exhaustion, relief, and triumph. "It's over," she whispered. "It's not just over," I said, catching my breath. "It's justice." We left the compound together, emerging into the quiet night. Sirens in the distance signaled the arrival of authorities, alerted by the live feed I had transmitted. Reeves would face trial, his network dismantled, and the lives endangered by his treachery would finally have a chance at recovery. On the way back to the safe house, Laura broke the silence. "Jake, you saved so many lives, mine included. I can't believe I ever doubted you." I smiled faintly. "You never doubted me, Laura. You just didn't know the world I moved in. Now you do, and you've proven yourself. You're stronger than you realize." For the first time in years we were equal, partners in shadow, allies in truth. The laughter, the mockery, the doubts of the past felt distant, almost irrelevant. What mattered was the bond forged in fire, in danger, and in the relentless pursuit of justice. Days later, the fallout from Reeves's arrest dominated military intelligence circles. His brother, Commander Jonathan Reeves, took immediate steps to secure the compromised operations, lauding anonymous contributions that had exposed the network. No one knew my involvement. That was how it had to be. Some victories are meant to be silent. Some heroes never appear on the front page. Laura and I met one evening on the balcony of the safe house, overlooking the city lights. The air was crisp, carrying the distant hum of life continuing despite the chaos we had navigated. She leaned on the railing, turning to me. "Do you ever think about leaving all this behind?" I shook my head. The world always needs someone in the shadows. But now, I have someone to watch my back. She smiled, a rare, genuine smile. "And I have you. I understand now what it means to be the angel of death." I let the words hang in the air, heavy with meaning. My life would never be ordinary, and our world would always demand sacrifices. But for the first time, I wasn't alone in carrying the burden. Together we had faced impossible odds, outsmarted a monster and survived. Together, We had reclaimed a sense of justice in a world that often forgot it existed. As the night deepened, I realized something profound. Power isn't in the weapons you wield or the enemies you defeat. True power is in precision, patience, and the courage to protect those who cannot protect themselves. And sometimes that power lies in the shadows, in the quiet, in the unseen. Laura turned to me, her eyes reflecting the city lights and the storm we had endured. "What now?" she asked. "Now," I said, placing a hand on her shoulder. "We live, we watch, and we make sure the darkness never wins again." The wind carried our words into the night, silent witnesses to the end of one mission and the beginning of another. The angel of death had fulfilled his purpose, and in the process had revealed the strength, courage, and heart of a sister who once doubted him. The world would never know what had truly happened, but that didn't matter. Some victories are never celebrated, some heroes never seen, and some bonds, forged in fire, shadow, and blood, are eternal. As we turned to enter the safe house, the city sprawled before us, alive, oblivious, and beautiful. The storm had passed, but the memory of the battle would remain. A reminder that darkness could be fought, that justice could prevail, and that even the quietest angels could wield the deadliest power. And in the quiet shadows, I finally allowed myself a rare, fleeting sense of peace. Enjoyed the story? Like, comment, and share to join the adventure with Twisted Fate Chronicle. Don't forget to subscribe and stay tuned for more thrilling tales only on Twisted Fate Chronicle.